It's unbelievable how little this woman knows. It's unbelievable that she ran for vice president and was unfamiliar with World War I, World War II, Korea, the whole ballgame. What information did she have? Has she ever taken an SAT afternoon exam, the one where they ask you what you know? Don't put her on jeopardy.
Choosing a running mate is called the most important decision that a presidential candidate will make for a reason, a decision that says as much about the top of the ticket as it does about the person that person also deems capable of being the real top of the ticket. Well, we have long known that Senator John McCain fatally botched that selection with his choice of then-Governor Sarah Palin. Senator McCain claiming this morning that he wouldn't know about whether or not a claim in a new book that she was basically never vetted was a fair assessment. Having introduced to national prominence a woman he had barely met, someone his campaign had barely vetted as capable of being president, the 2008 Republican nominee copping to ignorance, if not negligence, when asked about it this morning. Matt Lauer on the Today Show addressing the allegations as spelled out in that new book.
You've heard about this new book called Game Change, and you're kind of front and center in a lot of the chapters that seem to be a little inflammatory. So let me get you on the record about some of it. One is that your vetting process for Governor Palin before choosing her as your running mate was wholly inadequate. From page 363, it says, and I'm combining two quotes here, in judging Palin, it was relying on vetting so hasty and haphazard it barely merited the name. No one had interviewed her husband. No one had spoken to her political enemies. No vetters had descended on Alaska. Is it a fair assessment?
I wouldn't know. The fact is that I'm proud of Sarah Palin. I'm proud of the campaign we waged. She energized our party. She will be a major factor in American politics in the future, and I'm proud of our campaign. Look, I just spent my time over where 3 young Americans were just killed in Afghanistan.
And I respect that.
And that was over a year ago.
I respect
and I'm
that,
not
sir.
going to get into it.
But your comment that you just said, I wouldn't know, is somewhat surprising to me.
Well,
you were the presidential candidate.
Look, I wouldn't know what the sources are nor care. I'm not going to spend time looking back over what happened over a year ago when we've got 2 wars to fight, 10% unemployment in my state, and things to do.
The fundamentals of his campaign strategy are strong. Fox News, meanwhile, all but leaking the playbook of how it plans to use Senator McCain's former running mate in her new role as a contributor to that network. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, the vice president of programming, Bill Shine, said he hopes Governor Palin will be a polarizing voice on the network. She is one of the most talked about and politically polarizing figures in the country. First off, we hope she brings that. And if polarizing were to mean Palin might not tell the truth on the air, the same way she floated the false assertion of death panels on her Facebook page, that's also apparently high on the Fox News Palin wish list. Shine telling the paper that he was not concerned that Palin would make false assertions on the air, adding that the expectations that she will utter something controversial will likely drive viewership. Quote, in the end, that's probably going to help us in that that's what people will want to watch. Time now to call in our own Richard Wolff, author of Renegade, The Making of a President. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
The Senator McCain statement about he wouldn't know, did he think he was answering a question about he wouldn't know whether or not the reports that the vetting of Palin was woefully inadequate in the book are accurate, or that he wouldn't know about the actual vetting process?
Well, let's try and put ourselves in John McCain's shoes just for a minute here, if we can. Here's a guy who was shot down over North Vietnam, and he finds himself running with someone who doesn't know what North Korea is. You know, this is a guy who was a Vietnam War hero, and he had to have his staff explain to his running mate what the Second World War was. You can understand why he wouldn't want to revisit all of this or answer the question. The sad truth is that John McCain knew less about Sarah Palin, vastly less about Sarah Palin, than Fox News knew about her before they signed her up to be a contributor. So, you know, this is a shambles, and luckily, I think, voters recognized it at the time.
Is that luckily because of the sort of frightening prospect of an unqualified vice president on that ticket, or more evidently frightening because of the prospect of an unqualified or a disinterested president in that ticket?
Well, I think one thing we saw clearly in the polls was that people were concerned that this was a gamble, an unknown candidate coming onto the national stage. She may have been energizing in terms of her own supporters and in terms of the media. And by the way, one thing I haven't seen out of all of this recent media gasping over these revelations is not much looking back and saying, why wasn't this stuff discussed at the time? Why was Sarah Palin actually given a free pass in many ways at the time and treated more seriously seriously than the McCain campaign recognized that she deserved to be. So I think the voters there saw the Palin pick as a question mark, at the very least, about McCain's judgment.
Well, at least in this situation, we've seen the YouTube videos of her brief sportscasting career, so clearly she's overqualified to be an analyst at Fox News. But about that job, there was one mention of Ed Schultz of MSNBC being contacted by the Democrats in North Dakota about the Byron Dorgan seat, and maybe from North Carolina too. I don't know where that came from. But the Republicans immediately demanded that Schultz quit his TV show on this network and stop any other broadcasting, because that would be electioneering from a TV position, and that would be against at least FEC rules, if not FCC rules. Given that Palin has all this collection of websites and PACs that are positioned basically as a skeletal structure of her 2012 campaign for the presidency, or even the vice presidency again, how could the Federal Election Commission let her and Fox erase that no candidates on TV line?
Well, we know the FEC is a paper tiger, and you can't expect ideological consistency from some of these conservative critics here. But I do think there's a curious combination of politics and media going on at Fox News now that somehow sort of positions Roger Ailes as a Silvio Berlusconi. You know, Berlusconi used his TV business to promote political candidates, himself and others. You know, Roger Ailes has started with the zoning laws, according to the New York Times, in his own neighborhood. You know, Sarah Palin and the presidency is one step behind.
I'm just suddenly thinking of that fake video of the non-Berlusconi and the meter maid. All right, never mind. The Fox vice president of programming, who told the Los Angeles paper that he's not concerned if Palin were to make, as this euphemism goes, controversial statements, because that would probably be going to help us. It's as if they're not pretending anymore.
Well, you know, I'm sure some people are watching her right now and they're enjoying it. But, you know, Brit Hume last night, speaking to none other than Bill O'Reilly, had to be incredibly tactful, saying that Sarah Palin maybe would have a chance to polish her articulation of her policies and maybe become more attuned to world affairs and think about things in a broader context. I'm paraphrasing, but broadly, even Brit Hume has a low opinion of her. So God help the viewers of Fox News tonight.
Why just tonight? MSNBC analyst Richard Wolff, as always, great thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Keith.